Hey viewers, today we're going to do something a little different. It's going to be a WRX vlog. And what I'm going to be doing is removing these junky gauges that just never seem to work. I'll give you a demonstration. Watch the oil pressure gauge. Up, down, wiggle, wiggle. We're going to be removing those, moving my air fuel ratio gauge up to here and adding two more Innovate performance gauges. So let's get started on it. So I've managed to get the gauge hood off and it wasn't much fun. Obviously before I'd made the decision to use hot glue for whatever reason, probably because it was the only thing available at the time to attach it, and it has made getting it off. So, but anyway, these things need to come out, so I might head over to the bench and get them all out. Okay, so I've just done the trial fitment of the vacuum boost gauge just to make sure that it is going to fit and clear everything, and as you can see it fits quite nicely. So let's go through these gauges one at a time. I'll probably do these individually. So part one, vacuum boost gauge. What do you get in the box? Well, with all Innovate gauges you get two colour faces. So you get the white face, which I have on there now, and the black face. You also get two surrounds. You get a silver surround and a black surround. Personally, I prefer the black, and naturally the car has white face, so I've gone white face gauges. You also get the map sensor. So this is basically where it gets all its readings from, and has to be plugged into vacuum, which isn't too bad because if I remember correctly, I have got vacuum inside the car. Get the data link cable, some vacuum cable and a T, and also this little gauge here which is to connect up your RPM and shift light, set of instructions, and a sticker which, look, sticker's already made it to the wall obviously, so okay, the Innovate oil pressure. So this is oil pressure and temperature in the one gauge, and let's see what you get in this box now. Plenty of bubble wrap for the children. Now I have had these open and I have changed the gauge faces over. So you get the gauge itself, which I have fitted the white face, and if you need to change it, it's just remove those three little screws on the back and swap it over. So you get the white face, the black face, the silver bezel. Already have the black bezel on. The temperature probe, the oil pressure sender, which in this case is nice and small. If I show you the one that's currently in the car, you'll be surprised how small that actually is. The cable for the oil pressure sender, the programming cable, the instructions, and another sticker. So I'll just go through. So let's get all this one in the car too. It's fairly simple. A couple of thumb screws on the back. Wind those off. Remove the bracket. Put it in whichever you want it. So I'm going to have this on the far left of me. Put it in up the right way because it helps. Make sure you've got nothing caught. Pull it through. Then it's just bracket on. Thumb screws on. and make sure that you've got it all nice and square, and tighten them up. We've got all three mounted, and I've just noticed that I'm going to need to remove this because the rubber seal isn't sitting right, so may as well show you how it comes apart. There are 3 screws on the back. Remove the 3 screws, off it comes. Pop out the old one, put in the new one. Okay, we've now got all 3 gauges mounted in the hood, and as you can tell, it already looks much better. So now we're going to start with the wiring. Now I'm going to keep the wiring pretty simple with this. So each gauge has an in and an out, which we won't be using. So for the moment, I'm just going to tuck those out of the way. Now the in and the out is, one is the program with the serial cable, which I will be doing to a couple of them. And the other option is that, depending on which type you've got, you can daisy chain these and then get them to all record. Then each gauge has a little loom coming off it. Now the wiring is basically very similar. The air-fuel ratio gauge is different in that it has this moulded plug which goes down to the sender. The others have a couple of smaller ones which go off to their relevant senders. So for instance, this is the instructions for the boost gauge, and quite clearly here you can see one goes off to the map sensor, the other one goes to the tack wire. We have switch 12 volt, ground, and the headlight. Now, interestingly, these gauges aren't backlit. The headlight input is to dim them. Now, I've never bothered with it because I haven't found them too bright. So I'm just going to hook up 12 volt and ground on all 3 of these gauges. Okay, now that I've got the power hooked up, or wired up, if I connect this to my external power source, as you can see, they all light up. Now I have got an error there because the sensor's not plugged in, and so I'm not surprised about that, but as you can see, it works quite well. We've got a nice little opening sequence, and it should all work quite well. It's been a battle, but I've managed to fish the wiring at least to where it's got to end up. So this is the cable for the oxygen sensor, which runs down there and goes out under the floor under the car. I've got the oil temp, oil pressure, and the boost gauge here. Just there, the boost gauge. I've got the sensor just here because, as I said, I do have vacuum inside the car for my turbo timer. That's still very good. So that was a bit more effort than I thought it was going to be, but I have managed to get all the wiring to roughly where it's got to end up. This is the plug for the oxygen sensor. So that was already in the car. This will be for the tack input. These two here are the oil pressure gauge, so the oil pressure and oil temperature. and this one here is for boost and vacuum. And I do have the sensor here in my hand. I'm going to mount it up under the dash. I have a vacuum source just quite close by because I have a turbo timer mounted in the car, which is fully automatic and operates off vacuum. So that's in the car. So now it's really just a matter of getting the final parts of this gauge hood sorted out, which I'm actually waiting for my drill battery to charge so I can drill a hole. So let's see if that's on the go. So I've decided that the hole's going to be that big that I'm just going straight to the drill. Okay, we've got the basic setup in, it's all wired up. Still don't have all the sensors connected, as you can see. Power's up. It's now got no errors. If I blow in the map sensor, you'll see this go up. Conversely, if I suck, you'll see it go down. And it's started to read air fuel, and I don't have the temperature and oil pressure connected yet. That's next. So on with the show. Now the RPM signal just needs to tap into either a injector pulse or a coil pulse. In my case, with the ECM under the floor here, I've chosen to go with the coil pulse, and because I have a VCR already connected, I know that this lovely purple wire here is it. So I'm just going to hook up to that, and then we'll be set for the injector pulsing. Now this here is the previously horribly complicated setup that it had before. So what I had was anything that's 8 gas will require some Teflon tape. Don't simply believe that it's going to seal, because trust me, it now, because of where this is going to run next to the exhaust, I've put this lovely heat shielding on. I did have this on here before with the old one and it worked well, so I'm just going to reuse it. Now I'll route this down here, and okay, so we're going to program the gauge. Now these are serial port, so you need an old laptop with a serial port, or something with a serial port, or a USB adapter, and then all you do is connect it to the out cable and launch the Logworks LM programmer. Now we'll connect this. The gauge will change to, say, PRG, and then you can go through. So I want to set my pressure. Yeah, I'll have it in PSI. I will enable my overboost at, say, 25. Hit program. RPM. Now I need to check this. So what I'll do is display shift at. Let's have a progressive shift light. 3.5, 4.5, 5. I don't know if I'm going to like that. We need to shift at 7,000 RPM. Let's go 6,000, 5,000. Program. And I have a 4-cylinder car. Program. Now it's simply a matter of turning off the gauge, disconnecting the cable, start the car. See that starting to light up. So there we have. Now it's just a matter of putting everything back together and car's back to normal.
The bike. Now if you like what you've seen, over there is the subscribe button. Down there is a Patreon button, and down there is another video for you to watch. So click one of those. Woohoo!